Ranger Noah Hale had walked this stretch of land 1,000 times before, but that sound stopped him cold. It was a cry so small and thin that it barely reached the air. A newborn antelope, too weak even to stand, was calling for a mother who would never answer again. His boots rustled through the grass as he approached the base of a thorn tree. There, crumpled against the earth, lay a calf no bigger than his forearm. Its legs folded awkwardly beneath its body. Its heartbeat fluttered visibly beneath its delicate ribs. Its eyes, wide, glossy, drowning in instinctive terror, searched the empty landscape for warmth, for safety, for something familiar that simply wasn't there. Tracks told the story before Noah even finished examining the scene. The mother had run. The hyenas had followed. Nature had taken what it demanded. What remained was a life that wasn't supposed to survive more than a few minutes on its own. Yet the calf was still breathing. Just as Noah reached for his radio, the plains shifted around him. The wind paused. Birds stilled mid-song. Even the insects quieted, as if the entire savanna sensed something approaching. Then she appeared. An old lioness emerged from the tall grass, as if she were stepping out of memory itself. Her fur was faded and patchy, her muzzle dusted with white like a crown of frost. Scars etched their way across her body, stories of hunts, battles, losses, and triumphs no living creature could speak aloud. Her gait carried a limp, each step revealing the wear of years she should not have survived. She was a ghost of her former glory, a queen without a pride, a survivor clinging to the edges of a world that had moved on without her. Everything about her spoke of exhaustion, hunger, pain, a predator at the end of her road. But her eyes, those were still alive with something fierce and searching. When she saw the calf, she stopped. For a heartbeat, the world held itself still. The grass didn't sway. The air didn't move. Even Noah forgot to breathe as he watched a moment that defied everything he knew. The calf let out a broken, trembling cry, and the lioness softened. Instead of lunging with the last remnants of her hunting strength, she lowered her head slowly, almost reverently. Her body sank to the ground with a gentleness no predator should have carried. Dust rose around her paws as she stretched herself toward the helpless calf, not with the posture of a hunter, but with the cautious tenderness of something rediscovering purpose. The baby antelope blinked at her, too weak to flee, too young to understand danger. Its small body shook uncontrollably, and its legs tried once more to lift it from the ground, only to buckle beneath its weight. The lioness watched every struggle, every fall. Her ears twitched, her jaw relaxed, and for the first time in a very long time, her expression shifted from the familiar emptiness of hunger to something deeply human, something aching, protective, and impossibly soft. Then the old lioness moved closer. Her massive paws pressed into the dirt, slow and deliberate, as she closed the space between them. She lowered herself so gently that the earth barely registered the weight of her body. And with one careful motion, she curved herself around the trembling calf, enclosing it in a cocoon of her fading warmth. The calf didn't understand. It only knew warmth and shadows and the steady rhythm of a heartbeat much larger than its own. Its tiny frame pressed against her chest, and its shaking eased as it melted into the shelter of her fur. The lioness exhaled, a long breath that seemed to release years of grief and loneliness. She rested her chin beside the calf, her eyes half closed, not in sleep but in acceptance, as if she had finally found something worth protecting again. Noah stood frozen, overwhelmed by the impossible tenderness unfolding before him. This lioness should have been taking her final steps across these plains. She should have been succumbing to hunger, age, and the unforgiving laws of nature. Instead, she had chosen to save a life that was never meant to be hers. The sight was so unexpected, so powerful, that it stirred something deep inside Noah, something reverent, something humbled by the raw, unexplainable grace of the moment. A creature who had lost everything had chosen compassion over survival. A predator who had outlived her pride had chosen to become a mother again, even when she didn't have the strength to save herself. The calf nuzzled deeper into her. The lioness shifted just enough to shield it from the rising sun. And for the first time in countless months, she looked like she had a purpose again. Noah stepped back, understanding with absolute clarity that he was witnessing the beginning of something extraordinary, something nature rarely allowed. something fragile and wild and impossibly pure. An old lioness had just adopted an orphaned baby, Antelope, and neither of them had any idea that this unlikely bond would soon lead to something the world had never seen before. The days that followed unfolded in a way that felt almost dreamlike, as though the savannah itself had paused to witness a story it didn't quite know how to hold. The old lioness, whom Noah quietly began calling Mara, moved through the grasslands with the orphaned calf pressed against her side like a tiny shadow. Wherever she went, he followed. Wherever he stopped, she waited. Every sunrise found them side by side, and every nightfall wrapped them in the same fragile pocket of warmth. No one could explain it. Not biologically, not instinctively, not scientifically. The calf should have been prey. The lioness should have been hungry. Instead, they moved like two broken pieces that had somehow found a way to mend each other. Noah tracked them from a respectful distance, careful not to interfere, careful not to allow others to disturb the bond forming between them. Rangers whispered about the pair around campfires, their voices hushed with awe. The story spread through local villages, then across research circles abroad. Experts sent emails asking for photographic proof, behavioral logs, anything to help them understand the impossibility unfolding in the tall grass. But Noah sent nothing. Not yet. The moment felt too delicate, too sacred to expose to the dissecting eyes of the world. He wanted them to have time. Time to exist before they became a curiosity. Mara's body was tired, her movements heavy with age. Yet she pushed herself through each day with a determination that stunned every ranger who caught sight of her. It was as if the calf's tiny heartbeat had stirred something deep within her, a memory of cubs she had lost, a purpose she thought she would never feel again. She guarded him fiercely. She fed him with whatever scraps of grass and tender shoots she could guide him toward. She slept curled around him so tightly that even the coldest nights couldn't steal his warmth. And somehow, against every odd, the calf grew stronger. His legs, once trembling like reeds in the wind, gained steadiness. His eyes brightened, curiosity flickering in them like a spark warming into flame. He learned to walk beside her, to listen when her ears twitched toward danger, to press himself into her chest when shadows moved across the plains. He began to trust her completely. One afternoon, Noah watched from a ridge as Mara led the calf to a shaded clearing. The savannah was quiet, the air heavy with heat, the only sound the soft brushing of dry grass against their legs. Mara settled her body on the earth, lowering herself slowly, carefully, as if conscious that even the slightest abrupt motion could frighten the fragile creature beside her. The calf nestled against her ribs, his tiny frame rising and falling with the rhythm of her breath. For hours, she barely moved. She lay still as stone, guarding him from the relentless sun until dusk spread cool air across the land. Noah realized then that the lioness wasn't just protecting the calf. She was loving him. Her warmth, her touch, her patience. It was maternal in every sense, and it poured from her with a softness so profound that Noah felt something shift inside him. He had always believed nature was shaped by instinct, by necessity, by the brutal chase for survival. But what he witnessed each day was something gentler, something older than instinct, a quiet testament to the emotional depth animals rarely showed in the open. Word reached research institutions across the country. Experts insisted on visiting to document the behavior. Conservation journalists begged for interviews. Wildlife photographers requested access to capture the extraordinary pair. Noah refused every request. The land was enormous. The story was theirs. He wasn't going to turn it into a spectacle. Time passed, and the bond between Mara and the calf, now strong enough to stand unassisted and nibbling at fresh grass with more certainty, grew deeper. But nature doesn't pause for miracles. Not even for the most beautiful ones. One morning, the plains erupted with distant roars. A coalition of young lions had moved into the territory. They were powerful, fast, growing into their prime, everything Mara no longer was. Their presence rippled through the savannah like a warning. Vultures circled above, impalas fled, and the ground vibrated with the thunder of paws as the males marked their territory. These lions would not tolerate an old lioness wandering near their domain. They would not tolerate an antelope calf at her side. Noah felt dread settle in his chest, as he followed Mara's tracks. He quickened his pace, scanning the horizon for dust clouds, for movement, for any sign of confrontation. The wind carried the sharp scent of predators. Hot and restless, he found Mara and the calf standing at the edge of a ravine, their bodies silhouetted against the morning sun. Mara's ears were flattened, her muscles tensed beneath her aging frame. She wasn't running, but she wasn't relaxed either. She knew. She sensed the danger long before Noah had arrived. The calf pressed trembling against her chest, his head tucked beneath her jaw. Noah's heart tightened as he watched. This calf had no idea what was coming. He had no awareness of the savannah's unforgiving rules. Mara nudged him gently, encouraging him to walk, encouraging him to move away, but he didn't. He stayed glued to her side, refusing to leave. The lioness nudged him harder. Still, he clung to her fur. Noah felt his breath catch. She wasn't trying to lead him forward. She was trying to lead him away that a shadow passed over them. Then another. The coalition appeared at the top of the ridge. 3 young lions, their manes thick and blazing in the light, their bodies taut with energy. They scanned the savannah with sharp hunger, their movements synchronized in a deadly dance, and Noah's stomach dropped if they saw the calf. If they saw Mara protecting him, the inevitable would happen. Mara stepped in front of the calf, her aging body a living shield. She lowered her head, her tail brushing protectively around him, her posture unmistakable. She would not let anything near him. But the young lions had already locked onto the pair. They began descending the ridge, their approach slow but purposeful. Mara straightened, her breath deepening, her eyes sharpening with a fire Noah hadn't seen in her before. She was preparing for a fight she couldn't possibly win. The calf pressed into her. Trembling violently, Noah gripped the edge of a tree trunk. Feeling helpless, unable to interfere without risking escalating the danger. He could only watch as Mara positioned herself between the calf and the incoming threat. The young lions moved closer. 20 yards. 15. 10. Mara didn't back down. Her old bones held steady. Her heart thundered with a determination that broke Noah's breath in half. Then something happened that no ranger, not even Noah, could have predicted. The calf stepped forward, not toward the young lions, not toward safety, but toward Mara. He pressed his tiny head against her leg and stayed there, refusing to move, refusing to abandon the only mother he had ever known. Something shifted in Mara's posture. A softness mingled with her fierceness. Something ancient and primal flickered in her gaze. She inhaled deeply, and then she roared. Not the roar of a dying lioness. Not the roar of a scared animal. Not the roar of a creature defending territory. It was the roar of a mother. A sound so deep, so powerful, so filled with a kind of love that Noah felt it vibrate through the earth beneath him. The young lions froze. The wind seemed to stop moving. Even the vultures hovering above changed their path. Mara stepped forward, her body trembling with effort, her eyes burning with a message the younger lions understood immediately. She was not prey. She was not weak. She was a lioness defending her child. The coalition hesitated, confusion flickering in their eyes. They exchanged glances, unsure of whether to press forward or retreat. This wasn't instinctive behavior. They didn't know how to read it. Mara roared again, louder this time, her voice cracking through the savannah like a storm splitting the sky. The young lions backed away, not out of fear, but out of uncertainty. They circled once more, trying to decide if this fight was worth taking. Mara stood firm, her aging frame refusing to give an inch. The calf stayed pressed against her leg, his eyes wide, his tiny body shaking, but his trust unbroken. Finally, the coalition made its choice. They turned. They walked away. They left the pair untouched. Noah covered his mouth with his hand, overwhelmed by the sight. He had just witnessed an old, half-starved lioness, a creature who should have bowed to the natural order, stand her ground against 3 apex males and win not with strength, but with love. Mara lowered herself slowly to the ground, exhausted. The calf curled against her immediately, nuzzling her chest in trembling relief. She placed her paw over him protectively, her body sinking into the grass with a sigh that seemed to release every fear she had carried. Noah felt tears sting his eyes. He had seen rescues, hunts, births, tragedies, but nothing had prepared him for this. A mother's heart, even one borrowed from another species. had rewritten the laws of the savannah, and somewhere deep in the wind, the land seemed to acknowledge what had just occurred. Something impossible, something wild and gentle all at once. The lioness had chosen love over survival, and the savannah had bowed to her choice. The days after the confrontation felt strangely quiet, as if the savannah itself were holding its breath. Mara walked more slowly now, her steps heavier, her breaths longer and deeper. The battle with the young coalition had drained what little strength age had left her. Each sunrise seemed to steal a fraction more from her bones. Yet every time the baby antelope, now a lanky, bright-eyed adolescent Noah called Kiri, nudged her gently, she forced herself to rise. She had made a choice, and she would see it through. Noah monitored them carefully each day, studying the lioness's posture, her gait, the way she paused before standing. He noticed the tremor in her limbs, the stiffness when she stretched, the deeper line etched into her ribs where muscle had once been. Kiri had grown, his legs longer, his steps surer, his body filling into the beginnings of adulthood. He was no longer the fragile creature Noah had thought would never survive the night. But emotionally, he was still tethered to Mara. He clung to her side, grazing only when she stood nearby, resting only where her shadow touched him. He did not understand that she was fading point one evening. A golden haze settled over the plains, the kind that wraps the land in warmth just before night arrives. Noah watched from a distance as Mara climbed a small rise overlooking the valley. She moved slowly, deliberately, with a strange determination that made his chest tighten. Kiri followed, bounding playfully, unaware of the meaning in her steps. Mara reached the top and lowered herself onto the warm grass. Not with exhaustion, but with purpose. She lay on her side, facing the horizon, eyes softened by something Noah had only seen in animals when they knew their story was nearing its final page. Kiri settled beside her, pressing into her fur. She rested her chin gently on his back, and for a long time, they simply breathed together. Noah felt something in him unravel. He knew this moment. He had seen it with elephants, rhinos, old buffalo mothers. That quiet acceptance when life begins its slow retreat. But seeing it in Mara, seeing it after she had carved out the most impossible bond the savannah had ever witnessed, it felt cruel in a way nature rarely shows on the surface. Kiri nudged her again, unaware, innocent. She licked the top of his head, slow, deliberate, lingering. It was the kind of touch mothers give when they know the child will remember it forever. The sun dipped behind the acacia trees. A cold wind drifted across the plains. Mara exhaled deeply, each breath longer than the last, her chest rising slowly, falling slower. Her paw draped across Kiri's back grew heavier. Noah took a step forward, then stopped. This wasn't a moment to interrupt. This wasn't a moment for humans. This was theirs. Kiri curled tighter against her, unaware that the warmth of her body was fading. He pressed his head beneath her chin, exactly where he had always found comfort, exactly where he believed safety would always live. But Mara's breaths grew shallow. Her muscles slackened, her gaze fixed gently on the horizon. And then, without sound, without struggle, without fear, she went still. The wind paused. The savannah stilled. And Noah felt something inside him break. Kiri didn't understand. Not yet. He nuzzled her fur, pawed at her chest, waited for her to lift her head and groom him like she always did. When she didn't move, he lay down beside her, shivering in confusion. The earth around them felt too quiet, too final. Noah approached very slowly, kneeling beside the pair. He gently placed a hand on Mara's shoulder, feeling the silence in her body, the peace in her stillness. She had given everything she had, every breath, every ounce of strength, every heartbeat, to keep the calf alive. She had fought off predators, defied instinct, pushed through a body that had long reached its limits. She had died the way she had lived, with courage, with defiance, and with love. Kiri nudged her again, finally sensing the truth. His body trembled as he pressed himself against her one last time. Noah closed his eyes, letting the weight of it settle. There are moments even rangers never forget, moments that carve themselves into the human heart and never fade. This was one of them. Night fell gently over the savannah. The stars glimmered like distant lanterns, the sky vast and impossibly quiet. Noah stayed with them until the moon rose high. He didn't touch the calf. He didn't try to move him. He just sat in grief, giving the young antelope the space he deserved to say goodbye. As dawn touched the grass with pale gold, Kiri finally stood. He stepped back from Mara's body. Not in fear, not in confusion, in understanding. He lifted his head and faced the rising sun, his silhouette outlined against the light. He looked older somehow, as if the night had carved a line of wisdom into his young bones. Then, with a final glance at the lioness who had become his mother, he walked away from the rise and into the tall grass. He didn't run. He didn't hide. That he walked forward like something inside him had shifted, like he carried a part of Mara's fearless spirit with him. Noah followed at a distance. Kiri wandered toward a nearby herd of antelopes grazing in the morning light. For hours he lingered on the edge, hesitant, unsure. The herd watched him with mild curiosity before returning to their grazing. Then something extraordinary happened. A young female antelope approached him. She sniffed him gently, recognizing something familiar, something that belonged. Kiri bowed his head, trembling. The female nudged him softly, a gesture of acceptance, and the herd slowly made space for him among them. Kiri stepped forward. He was finally home. Noah stood there, watching the impossible unfold. A calf raised by a lioness, now welcomed back into his own kind. Nature had stitched together a story that defied instinct and rewrote the rules of survival. But the miracle wasn't over. Months passed. Kiri grew taller, stronger, a young adult with grace and awareness beyond his species. Rangers often spotted him keeping watch over younger calves, positioning himself between them and the shadows, protecting them the way Mara once protected him. One morning, Noah noticed something uncanny, almost supernatural, in Kiri's behavior. During patrol, a young cheetah had wandered unusually close to the herd. Instead of panicking, Kiri moved calmly, placing himself between the predator and the youngest calves, standing with the same quiet courage Mara once had. The cheetah hesitated, confused by this fearless stance. Kiri held his ground, steady and unshaken. The predator backed away. Noah felt his breath catch. It was Mara. Her spirit, her strength lived inside him. Kiri wasn't just surviving. He was guarding, protecting, leading. He had inherited the heart of the lioness who raised him. Every ranger saw it. Every tracker whispered about it. Some said he was half wildebeest now, half lion. Others said the savannah itself had chosen him for something greater. But the truth was simpler, more beautiful. Love had shaped him. Love had saved him. Love had rewritten his instincts. And Kiri carried that love into every step he took across the grasslands. Sometimes, at dusk, Noah swore he saw Kiri climb the same rise where Mara had taken her last breath. He would stand there quietly, letting the sunset wash over him, gazing toward the horizon as if listening for something only he could hear. A whisper, a memory, a promise that still lived in the wind. The rangers built a small marker beneath the acacia tree where Mara had passed away, a tribute to the lioness who had broken the laws of nature to save a child not her own. Visitors often stopped to read it, leaving smooth stones or strands of grass in respect. But her greatest memorial was alive, moving through the plains with steady, courageous steps. A young antelope who had learned strength from a predator, compassion from a hunter, and love from a creature the world believed was incapable of it. Kiri was her legacy, her impossible miracle, and every time he stood against danger, every time he guarded the herd's calves, every time he climbed that rise to watch the sunset, it felt like she was still there, not gone, not forgotten, just transformed. A lioness who loved beyond instinct, a calf who grew into her courage, a bond that broke every rule nature ever wrote. And somewhere in the hush of the savannah, where the grass sways like slow breathing, you can almost hear her, still watching, still protecting, still loving him, long after her final roar faded into the wind.